Welcome to Teach, Lead, and Expire, the Father Son podcast, where Jordan and his son dive into real talk about family legacy and the challenges shaping men's lives today. From personal reflections on the changing climate, both in the world and in society, to candid father son conversations, they explore how values, resilience, and intentional living can shape the future for generations to come. This episode isn't just about looking back, it's about building forward with humor, honesty, and a few surprising tangents. Conversations lay the foundations for what it means to create a lasting legacy in health, wealth, and relationships. Welcome to the episode, and welcome to your life. Anyway, okay. So, uh, when you gave me the idea about doing a book, and I was saying, well, how in the heck I'm going to do this, Um, and so I just started writing. I just started writing. I decided the only way I know how to do this is that I'm just going to go from the very beginning and go on. The focus, I called the book, the first thing I wanted to write about was what I did at Annapolis. That was a focal point.
hmm
And that really, your statement really hit home and actually came true because 2 years later, right after so I worked on the book and I had just published it. But during that time point when I was writing the book, the reflections back on my life at the time point was impacting me in a way that I didn't really understand. Okay, so our brain is something that is very powerful, and a lot of us don't use it. If you fill it with negative stuff, you're going to have negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts are going to translate and become reality in trash and junk, plain and simple. And I have read books like I'm not sure if I sent you the book, The Law of Success. Did I send you that book? Did we talk about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think freaking Misty might have snagged it already.
Yeah. So in that book about Napoleon Hill, when he talks about this and he went over habits of wealthy men, one of the things they always had a goal, so they had a definite chief aim of what they wanted to do. And they actually wrote up an affirmation. So they did that and they did it every day. So virtually what they're doing, they were training subconscious. See, why it's important for us to get 8 hours of sleep. And if you're an entrepreneur or really business, I'm talking about a millionaire mindset. Okay. Like Elon Musk. I mean, for whatever else you want to talk about these guys, even Trump or Elon Musk, guess what? They became billionaires. Okay. They first became millionaires and then they became billionaires. Now, these guys didn't sleep very much on what they did, but there were some things that they all did. They had a belief in themselves and about their what. They believed that they should create wealth and be wealthy. They had a wealthy goddamn mindset. Okay.
hmm
Whereas most of us, when we were brought up, like I was brought up the whole thing that I've heard over and over again, get a good education to get a good job. Okay. And the only thing we did when I had my job is that one, I gave up my rights. See, because when I gave up my rights, that means I couldn't do or use fully execute all the things that are supposedly afforded to me up under the Constitution. Mainly, and we'll talk
Right.
about the one about free speech. When I was in the Marines, there were certain things we can cuss and all that other stuff, but there are certain things that I had to change my talk or how I spoke or making sure who was listening to whatever I was speaking because I knew there were those out there against me that wanted to just do nothing but to keep me down, especially being a minority officer in a situation like in the Marines. Now, I know when I was at CBC, that Army instructor, he told me, whatever you do, don't go in the Marines. I didn't listen to him. I did just the opposite and went in the Marines. But see, he didn't explain what he was talking about. He knew that there was a heavy group of let's say systemic racism that was in the Marine Corps from being just down south and just connected to the Navy that I had no concept of because I was in my sheltered world in St. Louis, Missouri, where all I was around was all black folks until I went and stepped out and went to CBC, and then that was a different world. But then I saw how they were living, and I decided I don't want to be in the ghetto. I want to drive nice cars. I want to be able to go to nice restaurants. And that's why that put me on that track to go there. But part of that process of writing the book and giving the reflections, it changed me in the real world as a teacher. It changed my perspective about how I was doing. And as a result, the more that I wrote, the better I got in my regular job, my teaching job. And all of a sudden, I started becoming recognized as a leader. And they had no idea at the time point that I was writing the book, Annapolis Creed. And the summer before I released Annapolis Creed, I got called in by the superintendent, the same superintendent who I was pissed at, that pulled me out of my math classroom. I was a department head at the high school, at Santa Santa High School. And I got an involuntary transfer to go to the continuation school. And the reason was is because I had a high passing rate. They didn't tell me. She didn't come into my classroom. Nobody came, my principal, anything else. Matter of fact, my principal wanted to get rid of me anyway because he saw my influence on the other teachers and he wasn't getting a lot of yes men as long as I was around. So I
Mm.
know he wanted to get rid of me. So I thought the whole motivation about them voluntarily transferring me is because he wanted to get rid of me. He tried to get rid of me the year before, walked in right at the beginning of school. He says, "This is not working out. You need to leave as a department head." And I said, "Okay, I tell you what, I get voted in as a department head." I said, "Go ahead, let's do a vote. If my department says that they no longer want me as their department chair, I'm glad I resign." Okay, so we did it. Guess what happened? The vote came back 11-0 in favor of me. He had to shut his mouth. That even pissed him off even more. So what happened, what was behind the scenes was the superintendent had to approve that involuntary transfer, was that she wanted me over there because the graduation rate in the district was taking a serious nosedive because of the California high school exit exam. And the exit exam required high school students in California to take an exit exam in their 10th year, in their sophomore year, that was actually based off of eighth grade math standards and English standards. It really was. But it came into law. And why did they do that? Because the federal government was going to give them federal accountability money. Because President Bush did this No Child Left Behind Act, and he wanted to have 100% of all students to be proficient on all the tests. That's the one that got me into student loan debt because I had to have a master's in order to teach as well. So the end result was that it changed me. And so what happened was she actually signed off to send me there because she had looked at the results and saw that I had a 97% passing ratio the first time of taking the test. Also, I was very techy. I knew technology and everything else. She had been to a conference during the summer when they were already speaking to superintendents about the future because they need to be forward planners. And she saw technology was coming down. And she had this guy that was a Marine that was disciplined, that now that was working on, already had a master's, working on the doctorate, and is tech savvy. And he can teach the hell out of math where kids understand it and the kids pass the test. That's how I got there. Well, because of that, when I went there, and of course things flipped and changed around for that school, they had a leadership program that she came up with that she had went to that got her the idea that made her move me there. It was because of a program that she went through. And so she decided to make the district better. She needed to get other teachers and staff members and principals to go. And what it was a leadership program for Gettysburg, where it was a week, it was a week, 1 week, where so they paid, the district paid $7,000 to send me, to fly me out to Washington, D.C., and with a group that got on the bus and went up to Pennsylvania to the battlefield where Gettysburg was fought. And it's a leadership school. And that leadership school was teaching us about the generals. So we studied Confederate generals and the what do you call the northern, what do you call it? You got the Confederates and the Union soldiers, the Union generals. So from Lee, all of the generals on both sides. They actually even made a movie out of the scenario that I went to. Okay. So I get picked for that because of that. And then on that same day, right before we left, I had been working on the book and been editing the book and kept on, every time I was looking at it, I kept on finding more errors and I kept editing and re-editing and doing all that. And then all of a sudden I figured out, well, what am I going to do with the book when I got it? I can't open a bookstore. That's when I also found out, because I had been dealing with Amazon, then I found out that I could put my book on Amazon. So I bought a course about self-publishing. I paid $2,000 for this course called the Audio Income Academy. And it's still out there now. Okay. And I paid $2,000 for that course because it talked about how to get your book published, get it into Amazon, get it turned into a paperback, an audio book, and a hardback book, and where to go to place it so that you can sell it and make money. So as a result, was it worth it? Yes. Am I making as much money as they were talking about? No. Have I been making money? Yes. I've been making money off of my books. I've done 11 books and I've been making money off those books. They come in at the end of the month. That really starts probably about the 17th, probably about the 18th of the month. On the by the eight From the 18th to the 30th of the month, I get my phone rings, but it's text messages. And the text messages are notifications for Navy Fed where money's been deposited in my account. And sometimes they add up. They're small. Like I get I don't know if I go back over the last one, but I'll get one. At first, when I started, I was getting one at $6.33, and then I get another one at $8 and something, and then I get another one at maybe 35 something. And I was getting these. I'm saying, okay, okay. Well, at least it was enough. It was starting to be enough after a couple of months. It was enough to pay for my gas in my car, and so I
Right.
kept that. But then one day, as it kept going on, because then I did that the first book, but then it wasn't really getting I was getting those small ones. Then I decided, I got my doctorate now, so that's when I decided to write the book on math, about kind of to capture all the things I did to get these
Mhm.
kids turned around so that they can pass the exit exam and pass math. And so I wrote the book about it. And that's the book, 11 Effective Strategies for Teaching Mathematics to Kids that are giving up on learning. So I wrote that book and I just did that's the same thing. By now, I already knew how to write the book. I knew how to put it into Amazon. I knew how to turn it into an audiobook. I knew how to do the paperback and I knew how to do the hardback. And each one of those formats are a little bit different, mainly on the image. So for instance, the easiest one to do is an ebook.
Right.
We can do a topic on the ebook. That is the easiest format because it just needs a plain cover. Okay, just a plain cover, just a regular book size cover. Okay, and it's just text. So you can actually create it like in Word, created chapter one and everything. But the better thing is that I found out first one I did was in Word. But then when I did it and I uploaded, then I was getting all these format errors because it wasn't in the right format that Amazon wanted and was very frustrating. Um, and so what I wound up doing is that in Amazon they have this thing called Kindle Create. And
Hmm.
Kindle Create allows you to create the book, the ebook in Kindle. So you can actually do it in Word, the do you rough, then go ahead into Kindle Create and import that in, and it will import it into the Kindle Create, which is actually how Amazon wants it, and you just do the book there, and then you hit the export button, and you can export it up. So I wind up doing all those in there to create that. But when I did on the one that was about math and about education, and I went back to the course that I had, because the first time when you go through a course, you don't get everything. So I went back through it again. And when I went back through it again, I was getting these, oh shoot, I didn't see that. Oh, oh crap, I didn't do that either. And so I started implementing, going back and implementing again. So when I started launching that book, I started following the things about how to launch the book and everything, and these other places to do things, how to get reviews. That was another thing. How do you get reviews? Because when we go look at books, or we go look, like I just had example books. We've been on the health kick, so I have blenders.
Hmm.
So I went, how do I pick the blender? I go to Amazon, and the first thing I'm looking at reviews. You know, something that has 10,000 reviews versus something that had just six or seven. I'm going to go to the one that had 10,000 because it's giving me more evidence that this is worth my money.
Right.
Okay. So I started learning how to do that. And then what happened was, within a couple of months, I was getting um, $60 when the thing hit. And then I got one that had $120. That kind of got my attention, $120 I was getting in there. Then I had another one for $37, and I had some others for $13. But then about the seventh month, then I got this check for $235. I said, oh shit, $235. I said, what the heck? What did I what did I do? And I just, oh, that was so nice. Then the next month I got one for 500. I said, whoa, 500, that's a car payment. I said, what the heck? Well, here's the little secret. See, when you do put your book up on Amazon and you start to selling it, you're getting paid for things in the rear. So you're not getting paid. For instance, if I get something, this is what, October, right?
Hmm.
October. So this is actually based off of July, August, September, October, July. So whatever I did in my book sales on July, I'm getting paid for in October. So it's like when you're starting it and you keep going, you have to realize that the wave is coming, and as long as you keep doing. But see, I wasn't aware of that and I didn't understand it. And all of a sudden, then I got one that was for $900. Okay, one of the things hit my thing. I said, holy shit. I turned it and gave it to the wife.
Hmm.
$900. What the heck? So I the long thing is that I started learning how to do that. And that really right there, the experience, all the things. So the end result, like right now, where I'm at right now. Okay, just like last week when we spoke in the other session and stuff, I came up with this idea. I was talking about the post about student loans, and so I
Hmm.
came up with this concept about writing a book on student loans. But this time the book is raw. It's just like all my other books have been Walmart versions. It wasn't like the David Goggins book, You Can't Hurt Me, where he just laid it out, or Full Metal Jacket, where they're talking just like regular Marines, or just like we did when we are in active duty. I mean, when you had a Lance Corporal who didn't follow your instructions, who screwed up, you're not going to say, now, why did you do that? Why did you do that? No, hell no, they don't do that. They're going to say, what? Yeah, you're going to get me fucking killed and you killed. Don't you ever fucking do that thing again. That's how we talk in the real world. Okay. So the book I unleashed, when teachers were together, teachers talk like teachers talk. When they're in the classroom, they tone it down and they talk in the classroom like the classroom. They may say damn, they may say hell, they may say, bull or bull crap or fudge or something like that. That's the talk. But just like when the kids, when they go out my classroom, you got F bombs, N bombs, every damn thing is up and out there. That's the real thing. So I wrote the book on student loans. So from original concept, but now I'm also able to use things like Chat GPT as an assistant, okay, where I can go in and come up with an ideal, and you go in, and I go into Chat GPT and I said I want to write. I just talk to it. Matter of fact, I talk to it like a regular person. I go in and I said I want to write a book about growing pot. Okay, I'm going to say that. I want to talk a book about the dangers of pot in for a student who's in school, because only thing I know there's a direct correlation. If somebody's on pot and they're smoking, they're not doing as well on math as other kids. Now that's just my personal opinion, but that's what I wanted to write the book on. Let's say I go in there, and then I said, "Can you give me a rough outline? Suggest for me a book outline." And it'll give me some outlines of different chapters and stuff. And then you look at it, and what you do is that, no, I don't like this one. Oh, no, I don't like the way that sounds. You go through and you edit it, and you go back and said, all right, now use those. And you finally work it, and you finally work it, and finally work it. So it's like they're your typing assistant. Like you had somebody in the room and you had a conversation with them to do it. And that's what you go through. And then you finally get the line, and then you ask, depending on what type of book you're doing. If you're doing a nonfiction educational book, you probably going to come up like I would, because I'm the expert in the area, with what I want to talk about roughly in each one of those chapters. If I'm going to do a fiction book, then that's something different. You want to do a plot outline. And so you ask, so see, now I'm able to say those terms and make a distinction between them because I've already gone through the process of
Right.
writing a book. See, so when I did my first book, I did my first two, that Annapolis Creed and Enduring Classic about the cookbook and the dating checklist. All three of those books was written by me, edited by me and Carolyn, and I did it all with Kindle. When I started getting to the other book, and going more in depth, I started to say, hey, I'm up here making $900 or so on this other book. So now I'm going to take this and reinvest it. So then I went to using the company called the Urban Writer. And
Hmm.
there's more than one out there, but that's the one I use. And I started using that one based off of the course. Um, and what the Urban Writer is, ghost writers. Now, I didn't ever understand that, but just like James Peterson, James Peterson's a famous author that has all the books. Guess what? James Peterson doesn't write all those books.
Right.
In the very beginning, he did. He wrote his books, you know, and did it. But then you just don't write it by yourself. Just like when I had my doctorate and I did my dissertation, which was really my first book was my dissertation.
Hmm.
Uh, when you write the dissertation, I also have data calculations that you need a statistician for. So most doctors, when they do it, they hire somebody to do the statistics section. But then you also have an editor that someone is editing the book because your eyes alone is not enough to catch everything. So you pay someone to do the editing, you pay someone to do the stats. As a math guy, I didn't have to pay the stats guy because I am the stats guy. Okay.
Hmm.
I did pay for an editor. And so I would pay for an editor and everything else. And I would pay because because I'm still working. I'm still making, I was in this point, I got my doctorate. I'm making $100,000 a year. I'm making too much as far as I'm concerned because the taxes I was getting eaten up. That's why I wanted the book business because I had a small business, I can write the things off that I couldn't. See, everything I was doing, spending the money on the course, spending the money on the ghostwriter, spending money on advertisement, all that became tax deductions. So I learned all those things. And now with the power of AI, now I can give it directions. The end result from original concept to an outline on a book, I can get my plot outline and everything else, and I can create that in 24 hours. Then I can actually go ahead and give it prompts as we're going through to develop the plot and actually write out the chapters and everything. But I do it one chapter at a time because see, chat still has let's say drawbacks. It's not perfect. It don't do everything.
Right.
If you think if you can go in and say, hey, write me a book about this, well, you write a book, but you have to go back and look over that because sometimes that stuff ain't making crap. It's not making sense. Okay,
Right.
that's why you still need the human to do it.
Yeah,
So
nothing's going to be. I mean, just because it's AI and it's artificial intelligence doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect or it's going to be structured correctly or structured even the way you want it or even the structure the way that it makes sense. Because at the end of the day, all of that technology is still based upon real world things that have already been written, things that are already out there, are already in existence. So it still has to have something to draw from. So,
correct, correct. So uh because of all that, as I said, I was able. So the book is called Shattered Chains. And this is a book about a group of teachers. So it's actually the fourth book. So I had three other books that are fiction books that are called the Against the Odds, Chronicles of Resilience. And inside those books, I'm really retelling true stories that actually happened when I was at the continuation school. Real events that happened with kids, how they overcame obstacles and graduated. And it's like a historical fiction because it starts with one book starts before the pandemic, the second book was during the pandemic because that's when I actually wrote it during that time point of everything I was going on, real life experience. Then the third book was post pandemic. Okay, what happened to put things back together and 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 transition back to regular classrooms and school. And then the fourth book here is actually starting up right after the election and how things changed. Okay. But in this case, it focuses on the thing about the student loans and the kids. It focuses with the kids and how math should be taught. It should be a real life example, and how I'm going to say, just like right now in California, every student is required to complete this federal aid student loan application. Okay, it's a graduation requirement. Okay, and if you complete it, you're probably going to use it. But what they don't do is teach them about the loan and how
right.
it works. Okay, and as a result, we walk in blind, and it's just like going to the slaughterhouse. We bring in the cows, we feed them, we get them all fat, we put them up in there, we put a brand on them, and we shove them out the door, and they just wait until it's their day to be slaughtered. And that's virtually what it is. So, but these kids decided they got pissed, and the students decided that now they were using math to really understand something, and they
Hmm.
decided that they were going to tell other students so that they wouldn't get screwed. Okay. But it also has things that are actually going on. Like I have one kid he's worried about because his dad is undocumented, been here in the States, and he's worried because the ICE van is up there circling around the block, and he's wondering not whether they're going to be on the street. So it brings in immigration, it brings in a whole bunch of stuff, you know. But I created that book. Now here's the difference. So I got motivated on that because of what was happening with that post on loan forgiveness and stuff. That thing
Hmm.
is still growing. Okay, I think the last time we were speaking, it was at I think 150,000. I think it was. Yeah, it was like 150,000. As of today, oh sh oh shit. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Was that what I just saw? Come on. What the heck? Yep. As of this morning, 202,000. It's grown by 40,000 views in the last week with pure organic, no boosting. 602 shares, 226 reposts, and 438 saves, and 8 8.2 thousand. I mean, what? 8.2, yeah. 8.2, 8,200 likes. And every day I'm getting likes. And thus far, the total watch time 65 days, 17 hours, and 56 minutes. The total watch time 65 days, 17 minutes, and 17 hours, and 56 minutes. Oh my God. So This has a life of its own. And this is what motivated me about the thing about the book. So the book is about the student loans. This is about
You've
student
been
loans.
listening to
Right.
Teach, Lead, and
Next
Expire with
thing,
Jordan and
my
his
dear
son Hill.
son sends me
Dive
a
into
text
real talk
message
about family,
about this
legacy, and
new
the challenges
website.
shaping men's lives today. From personal reflections to changing climate, both in the world and in society. This episode just wasn't about looking back, it was about building forward with humor, honesty, and a few surprising tangents. The conversations lays the foundation for what it means to create a lasting legacy in health, wealth, and relationships. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. This is Dr. Smith. Have a fabulous day.
Mm-hmm.